Hello, I'm here to ask all the politicians, and whether it's provincially, federally, or locally, in order to help out to get the medical need I suffered over the 9.5 years. Because of political interference in my case, I was trying to go public with my situations. To start with, it's a contempt of courts. I've been framed for contempt of courts and for running my own business in Alberta. The name of the business, it's limo cab. So I was charging $1 a minute or $45 per hour. And this is the business name. So it's called limo cab. And that's since 1997. I run that business from 1997 to 2000. It was very successful. It's almost like very similar to Uber, the way it is now. So this is one. Before that, I ran for an alderman in Ward 5 in Calgary. So this is my family when they were young. I'm not sure if you could pick it up, but that's in 1988. And this is the back of it. So after I started a limousine business in 1994, I ran it almost till 2000. I had nothing but problems because in Calgary, the limousine business and the taxi business used to be by one taxi commission, but over the years when I started, they lost control of the limousine, and the limousine controlled by the province. So I have 8 limousine licenses, and I have 2 cars on the road at one time. I got thousands of dollar fines. They've been given to me every time they stop. They're trying to frame me. You cannot pick up off the street. So I had a lawyer to defend me. And that lawyer, over the years, he done a good job. We lost some, we gained some. So the difference is between limousine and taxis is they're both for hire, but they're both to pick up passengers. But the difference is one would have to be pre-arranged with a limousine, and the taxi business, it have to be on the street, a flag. So I stopped after they convict me after they convicted me on picking up off the streets, they acquitted me on a due diligence base because I didn't know if there's a difference between taxis and a limo. So I quit picking up off the street and I started running as a limousine, only on the business, a pre-arranged limousine. That wasn't enough for some of the taxi companies and the Calgary Taxi Commission. They framed me to pick up, after I got a call from one end of the town, the south end, they took me to, they phoned me on the phone. They said, "How long before you pick up?" I said, "I'll be there in a minute." So the guy, instead, he walked outside his home. And as I'm coming in, he put his hands up and pretending he's waving me off the street. I asked him, "Your name?" He said, "This is my name, so-and-so." He said, "Could you take me to the airport?" I said, "Yeah, that's fine." So I took him to the airport. What happened at a point A, they had somebody behind the bushes frame it and taking pictures to make it look like if I'm picking up off the street. In the meantime, at the other end, at the airport, they also had somebody across the street at the parkade after I was dropping off, they asked for, you know, what do you call that? A receipt. I gave them the receipt. And they were they were photoing me from behind at the parkade to make it look like if I'm picking up off the street and picking up off the street. And that's the beginning of the situations. What happened is they charged me for contempt of court. And in other words, if you don't listen to us, that's what we did to you. And that's why I got framed for contempt of court. So I won on the part and I acquitted on the other parts. So after they acquitted me on the due diligence, I started only picking up off the street. But there wasn't enough for them, so that's why I got this one here. So I appealed one of the fines for $2,500 to a provincial court. But in the meantime, I got charged for contempt of court. So I was fighting on one side, the contempt of courts, with my lawyer, and I went to Queen's Bench Court to fight the other one. They convict me for picking up, after they produced the pictures, for contempt of court. But at the lower, 2 days later, I also won the $2,500 fines because they cannot reuse the same evidence all over again. You could only use it once. So I got acquitted on one end, I got a charge on the other end. And that should be applied to it because I've been framed and they use the same evidence all over again. So after talking to my lawyer, he said, look, this is the case. You existed before the bylaw even started to take it. And in order to stop me, they made a special bylaw. You have to charge minimum $50 per hour and any parts of the hour considered as full hour. So I stopped doing that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, it started to take, severe toll on my business as a limousine. I abide by whatever they're telling me, $1, to pick up off the phone, but they start to interfere in my business. So after they frame me for this ones here, I want to appeal the decisions by the contempt of court. So my lawyer, he said, look, I understand where you're coming from, and they understand where they're coming from as well. So all what they're trying to do, they're trying to stop you from operating as a limousine, picking up off the street, which is I did already. He said, look, why do I have to appeal something they don't want to enforce on you? I said, what do you mean? He said, they don't want to enforce it on you. They're making you stop picking up off the street. I did already. He said, look, they agreed not to enforce this rule on you. And in the same time, I agreed not to pick up off the street. So I agree not to appeal that decisions, and they agree not to, to enforce it. And that's where it ended up. After that, I sold my limousine business. The eight limousine licenses with the 2 cars, and I made an application to go to Australia. And back to the Queen's Bench Court. The Queen's Bench Court, it automatically limit that charges because they use the same evidence in order to, to convict me for the provincial courts on the other end. So this is how we left it. I agree not to appeal it. They agree not to enforce it. because I was existed before the bylaw came over. And this is how I left. I went from here to Australia. I sent my application to the Australian High Commission in Ottawa, that's where we are. And I put an application. They accepted my application. They said you have to get a police record in order before we could give you the visa and meet all the qualifications. I met all the qualifications. I went and I got a police record. Police record nice and clear. So after I get my visa, I got a clear police record. I also got a very, the okay to go ahead to open a business in Australia. And I left from here to there clear. I don't own any debt. I don't have any problem whatsoever. So when I left from here to Australia, I left on the business visa 457. And that business visa 457, you could renew it 2 times, but after 2 years, you could apply for permanent residency in Australia. And this is where the trouble is. You have to get a police clearance as well from the country for the last 10 years. So I applied back to the Canadian. That's where I've been living for the last 25 years before. So I applied to the RCMP. I gave them the exact dates, what is going on. And it took them at that time, at 2003, almost a year before they get back to me. I sent my fingerprints. They know the date, the times, and I sent my families as well, because some of them, they were over 18, some of them under 18. Most of them, they came clear, except they reinforce and reactivate that contempt of court, which is not supposed to be there, because this is how we left it after 3 years. So the Australian government, they said, well, you could stay on the 457 or you could make another application. So I applied because after 2 years, after I met all their demands from the Foreign Investment Review Board, I applied for permanent residency. After 9 years, they turned it down. So they want me to withdraw the 457. They want to withdraw 845, which is that's permanent for permanent residency, and they want the 457. You could apply it again. I did not want. I want them to rule on the permanent residency. So they turned it down on the permanent residency because I don't want to pick it up, reject it. But they didn't tell me you had a contempt of court. I had the opposition leader helping me out in order to talk to the immigration department. And I had one of the ministers as well. He's an MP for my riding. They were both trying to help me out in that matter. But because of contempt in Australia, they don't distinguish between a civil and a criminal. So they turned me down on the 845, and then a week later, I got the approval for the second visa 457, which is another 4 years. So until 2009, I couldn't get any more visas. So I fall under Visa E, which is electronic visa. And that electronic visa allows me to work, to support my family, and to keep whatever, they said, keep working until we make a decision. So finally, they come to an end. They don't want to renew that visa anymore. And I trying to see if I could pick up and another way to stay in the country. So I went to migration lawyers and migration agents. They said, look, we never had that before. You done what you're supposed to do, but this is very, very strange. Okay, so the reason they arrested me because I didn't feel like I met all their conditions, and I know how difficult it is to comply with their decision, because they made up their mind. They arrested me and they locked me up because I didn't leave voluntarily, and they put me on the airplanes back to Calgary. And what happened is, because there is a $5,000 fine for that contempt of court, somebody activated after I get to Australia. And on the way back, they put me on the airplanes. I landed in Vancouver. There's supposed to be a warrant for my arrest. That warrant, it disappeared. They stamped my visa in Vancouver. So when they deported me back, they sent at least 5 agents with me. It cost me over $45,000. One of it, it's 2 immigration officers, a 3 escort, and a doctor. So when I arrived in Vancouver, your passport, the agent, they were with me. They looked at it, they stamped my passport, and they said, Mr. Shabib, here we go. Have a good day. And the agents, they were escorted me back from Australia to here. They were shunned. So I said, Mr. Shabib, where's the warrant? Where's the arrest? You're supposed to be under, supposed to arrest you for warrant, for contempt of court. I said, look, your guess is good as mine. So what they did, that contempt of court, when they put me back to here, somebody activated, which is not supposed to be there, and then somebody reactivated, took it off when it's already there. So they tempered both way on my call. They put me at the hotel, the Granville Hotels in Vancouver. They said, this is, if you ever need a medical help or anything at all, this is you could contact us, or you could contact that number, or you could go to any agent. So after they said, where do you live? I said, I live here. So they decided to buy a ticket from Australia straight to where my sons who live in Toronto. So I spent the nights over in Vancouver. They put me on airplanes back to Ottawa. To Toronto. I came back and I rented a place here, and I started protesting. After I went to the city of Ottawa, I got permission to protest in front of Australian High Commission. So on the first day, when I arrived there, I showed them my permits. After I showed them my permits, they said, you could allow to sit on the northeast corner of the blocks, the RCMP. So I stayed there every month for, I have to renew that. And after I renew it on a monthly basis, then the big problem, it started because they want to remove me off the property where I was. They said you could be for trespassing. You could be charged for trespassing. At that time, I put a tent in between the sidewalks and the boulevard, between the line of trees where is now that stations for the train stations, right where the elevator shaft goes down. There is 2, I think it's called, I'm not sure, sergeants came over because they want to, the security of the property of the building, they want to move me out of there. I wasn't on their property. I got a permit from the city. So the Age Sun-paper, they came over, they picked, not the Age, the French newspaper. I'm not sure the names now. Later what? They photocopied, they called the police looked at it, the permits legally. I'm not blocking anybody in order to make sure I don't hurt anybody, for blocking the pedestrians. They said, it's fine, this is your papers, thank you very much. They left. But the security of that building, they kept stressing, and they called another police the night before. So another sergeant came in. I didn't want to go into 100% into details. Same thing again. They look at me, they look at my permits, everything is legal. It's not a problem. Parking control, they go on by almost every day. They wish me a good luck. A police, they were walking by, they wish me a good luck, and they said, good luck to you with your project. But what happened is, I put signs on the side, where I had it for almost a month. Now they want me to move the signs as well. Not only to remove the tent. So I slept the nights over there at the tents between the trees. I wasn't blocking anybody. They called the next day, they kept phoning people until there is a big sergeant came, which is Sergeant Quillard. And Sergeant Quillard, the one who said, you have to move your tent. Finally, they convinced me to move my tent. But now they want, after I move my tent, as I'm taking them home, they throw half of my property to the garbage while I'm gone trying to remove it. And then some of the signs, they want me to remove it. They said, your signs, it said, the front walk, the front door. So I said, okay, if I take it to there, is not enough room to be in 50 O'Connor Street. He said, it doesn't matter. You could put it half on the side and half on top. I refuse to do that because it's not safe for pedestrian and it's not safe for the cars. Any little wind that could pick up and wreck it, for the cars or damage to them. What I did, instead of just put it unevenly, I listened to him and I moved my side, the signs. And I put it straight where my permits allow me. Then they picked up, they said, no, you have to put it that way or we're gonna take it. So they packed my signs and they left as well. They took my signs and they didn't allow me, and they took my permit with it. So I went back to the lady who issued it on the baseline from the city of Ottawa. She said, no, they can't do that. I will reissue that license. Police cannot take your permission. So after taking my signs, they made me carry the signs on my back, on my shoulders. I got tired of it. She said, look, you have a permission. The cops cannot take it. So on the third month, I put right where the permit said, 50 O'Connor Street, the front door. So I put my signs right at 50 O'Connor Street at the front door. And this is where the trouble is. They came in and media came over, the Sun newspaper, the TVs, the whole thing. They started video and photo, the whole thing. They waited until all the media is gone. They said, now it's a time to move on him. I was inside the tent. I didn't want to go into 100% detail because this is for the court to sort out. And this is after the media is gone, everybody is gone. They pulled me out of the tent because I refused to get out because my permit, it said right within my permit. So this is what happened. They pulled me out. They said, "You go into the Prime Minister's office and you're telling them, to interfere on your behalf. We're going to teach you a lesson you're never going to forget." I was surprised. They pulled me out, RCMP and the Ottawa police together, but the RCMP, they were giving the order, because I was negotiating with Mark Lalonde. He's the RCMP who was controlling all the times. And as they arrested me, they called for a police cruiser, and that police cruiser did most of the damage on me. They put my hands behind my back, which is I already had an injury before, and I recovered from it. But nevertheless, they put my hands behind my back. They started kneeing me in their knee. I'm not sure how you call that, like banging on my hands behind my back. And as I'm trying, they remove my signs and the tents from the sidewalk where my permit's allowed to do. This is where the trouble is. Police cruiser pulled over, and as that police cruiser pulled over, I tried to sit at the back of the police cruiser. And what happened at the police cruiser, I seen lots of different arrests, but I never experienced any. I never seen anything like this, but it happened to me. Instead, tucking my head and trying to put me at the rear right door. The minute I started trying to lower my bum in order to get inside the car, they start to push backward and upward, holding hands here and a hand there, and ram me right on the edge above the door, on the edge of the roof. So this is where I got hit right at the back in the middle of the, and that wasn't enough for them, so my head flipped backward. And when it flipped backward, it hit the external occipital protuberance. Bang! I couldn't see anymore. There wasn't enough for them, so they kept pushing inside. So the head flipped backward, and then they kept pushing, forcing it, and pushed forward. And as they pushed forward, it did a lot of damage on the vertebra. And that wasn't enough for them. I couldn't see very well. I was trying to see if I could pull my legs inside the car. I got my legs shoved inside the police cruiser at the rear right door. And I'm still dealing with it because I couldn't see. Something like a little blink. It hit me on this ends here. The middle right sections. And bang, I went from a rear right to the rear left, and I passed out totally. So 4 different kinds of stuff. Hit at the back of the neck, flipped the back backward, hit the external protuberance, which is a crack right there, and then kept flipping, kept pushing inside, flipping the head backward, so it did damage backward, forward, and that wasn't enough for them. When I get hit, it got parts of the middle sections, where the lumbars and a part of the thoracic, and they got parts of the iliac, the upper parts of the iliac crest, where the pelvic. So when I get hit on the side door, this shoulder is here, it got a part of the door and the left-hand side of my head against the door. I almost went through broke some of the windows. It's an old Grand Marquis or Crown Victoria. I can't remember the car. I think it's a Grand Marquis. Maybe they're both almost identicals anyway. I passed out totally. For how long? I'm not sure. What I noticed, I start waking up and I'm in a choking position, unable to breathe whatsoever. After I figure a way to get out in order to be able to stabilize myself. So I hook one of my right foot under the rear front door. Rear right door, I'm in the front seat, a rear right. I managed to hook my legs underneath it and trying to gain as much as possible to gain my weight for the legs in order to straighten it up. Unable to keep my head up, my chin started to go downward. I'm dying. They kept me inside the car while they were doing some business outside, taking all the photos and the signs in another car. So the driver was an African American. He was taking me to the courthouse on 4th Street. Not 4th Street, I'm sorry about that. On Elgin Street, to the police station, major police station there. They took me to that police station, and I pleaded with him and said, please take me straight to the emergency. I'm dying, I can't keep my neck up. Oh, I think you're laughing. I think you're fortunate. I couldn't believe it. I have no choice. He took me over to that police station, went under the basement. Sergeant came in. He said, what you're in for? I said, well, your guess is as good as mine. I never get charged for anything. They said, you're under arrest, but I never get charged. Well, take your clothes off. I took my belts off, emptied my stuff into a bag. So they put me at the cell. I asked if you could mind, please give me a pillow. My head, it's killing me. They started laughing at me. Nobody wanted to give me anything at all. So I started to use the washroom toilets as place for my head. They brought some food. I couldn't eat no food. I wasn't in a position even to swallow. My neck, it's totally out of mess. So the guy, he put his hands up. He said, please, if you don't want to eat it, I could eat it. So his hand is already from one next cell to me on the right, so I passed it over. The next thing I know, my neck, every move I make, it kept ripping the back of the knee, of the head. All those muscles kept ripping and ripping and ripping of the inferior and superior nuchal lines until it reached right to the base of the head, the craniocervical junction. And when it reached a craniocervical junction, all what I remember, the whole thing, it was flopping like you wouldn't believe. My neck, the back of the head, the shoulder, the hands, everything, it's going haywire, flopping out of control, and the next thing, I don't remember nothing anymore. They took me, somebody noticed on the camera, the next door, passed out again the second time. So inside the police cruiser from the first, I got hit, I passed out, and then the second time, I got hit, and I'm sorry, my apology. The first time I passed out inside the police cruiser, and the second time I passed out in the cells because any small movement, it kept ripping until it reaches suboccipital muscles. And that's why I lost control. The next thing, I start to wake up. They trying to put me inside the ambulance. As they put me inside the ambulance, they put a rest on my hand. It was so tight, like you wouldn't believe. My hands all the way to the elbow, to the shoulder, to the neck. it's killing me. I barely able to, frozen. I pleaded with the police who was escorted me at that, inside the ambulance. So I start using the left legs to trying to get some movement on the right of my hand, on the right hand. Then they locked my foot inside as well. So now my hands tied up, my legs tied up, shackled inside the ambulance. And I was breathing so heavy, I could not believe what happened next. The police, he stood up because I was asking for relief to loosen up the handcuff. He jumped on my hand, on my mouse, and he pushed downward because I was breathing so heavy. He pushed on my mouse. I couldn't communicate with him, and it kept that way until I reached the general hospital. And at that general hospital, the next thing I remember is the nurses coming in. They giving me 2 needles, I think VSD or SVD, one above the knee on the right and one on the left. They drugged me and I was out. So I get some of the blood results, which is right here. The CK, because they ripped up my muscle. I'm not sure if you could reach it right here and right there. And the troponin, the whole works. Normally is a range about 2030 to 215. My CK went to 2,289 the night. The next morning, it dropped down to 1,970. And the troponin, everything, it killed me, it destroyed me, basically. I'm not sure if you could see it all, but this is what I have. And they tried to claim I checked in on my own. They did not, believe in this kind of situations. So they kept me overnight. For how long, I'm not sure. The next morning, bang. They said, you're free to go home. No doctors, nobody came over except the nurses. They were taking the blood pressures off me. They didn't even ask me what went wrong, what's going on, where the pain, where everything. One doctor came in after they seen the ECG. No, he's free to go home. So they destroyed all the record, almost everything. So finally, I managed to get a hold of the flow sheet, of the nursing flow sheet, and some blood tests here as well. What turned out to be, they cracked the skull, and they cracked my neck and the shoulders. All that's why it went bang. I lost control the second time in the police cell. And ever since, I've been trying to go back to that hospital and trying to get some helps. Every time they're giving me a runaround. The reason I'm saying all this stuff here, because when the politics involve into this kind of situation, it's terrible. So they denied I ever have a problem. They denied I have a problem with my neck. They also denied anything it's ever existed. So if I didn't have those, so they ripped, I have no muscle controlling at the back of the neck. And since May 17, 2010, I've been trying to go back and forth, trying to get some helps, and I've been getting the runaround. To make a story short, I hired a lawyer. They charged me criminally for putting stuff on the sidewalk, and they convicted me criminally. I have a license to do just that. They said, no, you put a public to dangers. You told me to go on the main, where I had my permits. No. Well, you got to see a psychiatrist. So at the first incident, they let me go at the general hospital without asking any questions. So I went home. I was still under the influence of the drugs, or the one that they put into me. So I started listening to the police. They said, your next best alternative to make a brochures and hand it over. My permits still exist. So I went to that corner 2 days later, after 17th of May. Could be 19, could be 20. I don't have the, I have the dates, but I couldn't recall exactly if it's which one. And I was protesting. The same guy, the manager of that building, called, and the police came in, cruiser, can I see your permit? I said, the police took it, and this is the permit. No, you're not allowed to protest here anymore. So what are you talking about? She said, you're not allowed to protest. Well, you're under arrest. I said, what are you talking about? I never get charged. I didn't know all that type of stuff. So then she charged me 2 more charges. It turned out to be there's about 3-4 charges laid against me, which is I didn't know anything about it from the first night because I got released. She took me over to the police stations. And then after that, they made me see the next day, brought me to the courthouse. At the courthouse, I appeared in front of psychiatrists. They said, I got to see a psychiatrist before you could see the judge. Okay, well, listen, that's fine. He said he's fit for trial. And that was Dr. Booth. He's a medical doctor, and he's a psychiatrist, the one who assessed me the second time, the first time. He told the judge, you're free to go home. Now all what you need is just a basic papers, to do some papers. I was trying to do the papers, but I didn't have any money to be bailed out. Because I didn't have the money to bail out, and I don't know, what did I say? Maybe I don't need anybody to bail me out. I could be wrong. No. They put me back again, straight to Ennis, at Ennis jails on the way to Orleans. They made me spend the other nights over there, or 2, because I think it was the weekend. As the weekend, they brought me back again to that to that police stations, and made me appear in front. They said, look, you could be held in contempt of court if you don't see a psychiatrist. I didn't know. I never been into that kind of stuff. So I said, what are you talking about? You have to see a psychiatrist because you could be held in contempt of court. I didn't want to be held in contempt of court because this is what it got me in the first time. So after I agreed to see them, because I could be held in contempt of court if I don't see. That's what they made me believe. It's, you could be held in contempt of court again. So I went over there. I saw the first sessions and the second sessions, and then I made my own search to see, is it a court order? To see if it's I have to see him. I found out it's not a court order. It turned out to be, it's a fake. So I picked up the phone, I phoned his secretary, and I said, excuse me, I seen Dr. Booth for 2 times, and I don't want to see him again. Cancel my 3rd sessions. They said, what? I said, yeah, cancel the 3rd session because it's not a court order. He made me believe it's a court order. That's when the politics start to get involved in it. So I left, and he said, okay, she said, okay, you'll be canceled. But this guy here, instead, he completed the report. 2 months later, because my family physicians, he told me, you have a sleep apnea. And I said to him, Dr. Booth, he said, you could be, I could see you for helping out with a sleep apnea. So I went to see him, and he used the third visit. I told him not to do that, but he still finished the report as a third interview without my knowledge, and I told him to stop it. But he sent the report to the court, and they convicted me of, but they released me on the conditions not to appear in front, not to protest anymore or to be anywhere close to the Australian High Commission. So I abide by this, and I stayed out of the Australian High Commission, except when I go to the banks across the street from me. And this is how after 2 years, my situation, it gets so bad. I can't sleep. I tried the sleep apnea. I tried the BiPAP, CPAP. It's nothing. My situation is getting worse, and every attempt I try to go back to that Ottawa hospital. There's a lot of good doctors at that hospital. Don't take me wrong. I'm not trying to put the hospital down. But somebody, because of the political interference in my case, they're keeping everything right down to, like it's almost nothing happened to me. My situation is getting worse and worse. I hired the second lawyer, civil, after I lost at the criminals, because I ended up having to represent it because my lawyer, she wasn't following my directions. So I had to represent on my own. And I hired 4 other lawyers to launch a civil lawsuit against the court. And and the cops, every time I make getting close, all of a sudden, they said, you're lost. I said, what you talking about? What, I'm lost? They said, you lost your case. I beg your pardon, I haven't even get to the court. So what happened is, the first, because I sue the Crown, the Crown General, I'm not sure the federal ones. It was as well in the 2 together in the lawsuit. Somehow they made a deal behind. They said they were only bystanders, and they brought this actions, and they dismissed against the federal ones. But the police, they said, we're only bystanders. The police done the damage. This is what's going on. When I see that, I went and I hired a different lawyer. That different lawyer, I don't want to go into details in his name, because I have a court date on the 16th of October. What he did, he went and he launched a parallel file under my name without my knowledge. So I have 2 court cases under my name, but I only have one. I only have 1 lawsuit in a civil. To make a story short, I asked him for a statement, on my account. He refused to give me one. When I insisted, he tried to kick me out from his law office. What I'm going to fight with him? If I want to complain to the police, he's the one who's trying to protect the police and the Crown, the city of Ottawa, a lawyer who represents the police, Mr. Wright, Jeremy Wright. So I went and I found a different lawyer, somebody who represented another lawsuit, another law firm, which is very well, good names. So I went and I told her, look, I have 2 different parallel files, 1 real lawsuit file and 1 parallel file. This is what's going on with me. Could you please look at it? She said, that's fine. After her manager told her, he said too expensive to go on, the big lawyer. So they given me some junior lawyer to work with. But he was controlling behind the scenery. So what happened at that case? She's supposed to cancel the one which is a parallel and keep the original ones. So we held, let's see here, what do you call it? A discovery. So we held a discovery, and after our first discovery, I'll have the dates here later on in the courts, so that would be brought over. Less than a month or 2 months later, they said, you lost in court. I said, what are you talking about? It haven't even got to the court yet. So there is somebody within the law system helping them out to lodge those parallel files. They said, well, there's this paper's here, which is dismissed your action. I said, dismiss it on what? They said, it has been 5 years. What are you talking about? It hasn't been 5 years. You only been on it less than a year. And you did hold the discovery. I said, no, it can be. She said, what are you talking about? I said, it cannot be. It cannot be a dormant. When she said, it cannot, oh, you remember now. Because what happened is, what do you call that? The psychiatrist who I saw 2 times, and he's not supposed to make the report because I canceled it with him. He went and he did finish it without my permission because I canceled it and sent it to there, and he diagnosed me with a psychosis. All the above, a mental, everything. I have all the papers here to confirm this. But what he didn't tell the courts, it is because he's the one ordered a CT scan on me. And that CT scan at the Civic Hospital. And that's supposed to deal with, to see what's going on. That's why he said, I'm going to get you the medical attention to me. So he told them this guy has psychosis and that stuff. He even predetermines. So after they trying to figure out another way around, once they get you on that, you're basically fighting uphill battles. So I went and I hired my own psychiatrist. And that psychiatrist, he said, he's perfectly fine. I saw all his paper. Is nothing wrong with him. She couldn't believe what they done to me. So, after one of the trial coordinator, then she appeared in the front of the magistrate, and they reactivated, because it's not supposed to be. How could you be holding, a discovery and then your file, dismissed? Because she never bothered. She kept the other one going, the other files, in order to make it look like I dismissed it because this guy doesn't know nothing. So I went and I hired a third lawyer. A third lawyer as well. He's supposed to to work and continue on. So every time I'm trying to, I had enough from this lawyer, and then this is what's going on. I go to another lawyer. It turned out to be they all coordinating between them and the Ottawa police lawyers, which is Jeremy Wright. I have all the papers here to confirm. What they did, it's out of the ordinary. In order to make it simple, what I'm here for, I'm here to asking anybody in the medical industry to give me helps because I need that operation very badly. Dr. Tsai at the Ottawa Hospital told me you need a 5-hour to 6-hour operation for a herniated disc. It's a way inside, almost right where the neck sits on the head. So she sent me to do a medical, nerve conduction study, which is I done it, which is clearly shows I have the left-hand side a medial nerve, and it's not local. It's just stuck up on top. It's right up to the head. And as a result of all the necks, it's nothing supporting that head anymore because the muscle is not there. So every time I make appeal at the hospitals, because that's the only one could help me out in the neurologist, but it falls on the deaf ears, even to the point which is they did the sternocleidomastoid. And the sternocleidomastoid, as you could see it, I think in this part here, it did not even engage, because whenever I close my eyes, I'm basically as good as dead. My body going all kind of different direction. One is going on the right because there's the back of the head, the inferior and superior nuchal lines, it cut off. Now the sternocleidomastoid, I have to pull them out the way in order to be able to breathe. I have to sleep on the left-hand side where it hurt the most, where the nerves stuck. So on the right, I have the ulnar, and on the left, I have the median nerve. And that median nerve is a killer, because what happened is there's two different kinds. I have a bony spur running between 4 to 7. And those bony spurs went almost a fuse together. That's why I'm having the troubles. It's almost like if you bring a welding machine and you shut it off because of the jitter when they hit me at the back of on top of the police cruiser and inside. So I need a desperate medical helps in order to get some relief. After I did the nerve conduction study, I went to her. I want to see her because I decided to go ahead with the operation. She denied ever even existed. So this is what happened the next. So I started to go to Toronto, a routine brain imaging at Sunnybrook hospitals. They found a part of the deep white matter. It's dying on me, because what happened is I have the herniated brain inside the brain stem, and that herniated brains causing the nerves getting stuck. And this is beside the welding 4 to 7, the bony spurs. And the next, because straightening of the neck, because there's nothing holding that neck all the way. It's a start to jamming the blood vessels. And those blood vessels, I have 50% stenosis in order to get the blood up to the top. So part of the deep white matter, it's dying because of that reason. It's not getting all those veins and arteries being jammed with a CSF leak. And some of them, they started causing the problems. And then I went back to after on the way back from airplanes, from Toronto back to here. The pains, it was so bad at the back of the head. So this is what they found out. If I could read it, or you could pick it up by the camera. That tell you where the brain is. I mean, not the brain is. That tell you basically where the damage is. It's a part of C1, C2, and the dens, and also C2, C3, the herniated disc faucet, and the disc faucet, and also 4 to 7, which is the bone spurs causing all the troubles, and that's why it's almost welded together. So I'm having a severe problem in order to get back to that hospital, trying to get, the medical attention, and they keep denying everything that's ever exists. And this is an early beginning of the stuff which is showing some straightening of the lordosis and some intervertebral disc as well, at the bottom. I have all the evidence it needs for the operations, but they keep denying it ever exists. And also at the courts, what happened, they made me, because I suffered severe brain injuries, they taken advantage of the situations, removing evidence. So first of all, they launched a parallel file under my names, and second, they removing evidence from my file. Not one lawyer, not two lawyers, 3 lawyers. So the first lawyer, he lodged parallel file, and the second 2 lawyers, they removing evidence without my knowledge. So they tamper with my evidence. They're removing some of it, and now they're trying to bring it back. They said, this is what's going on. That's how bad is my situation. And then obstruction of justice, colluding. They keep settling the accounts with behind my back. Why on earth I have to go from one person to another lawyer in order to keep it? They said, no, you give us that permission. I never give them such a thing permission. I suffer severe brain injury, and they taken advantage of the situation. So this is what I'm going public with it, because I need urgent medical help. So I got left without lawyers. I got left without a doctor's a family physician who's supposed to be my doctor, with my lawyer, and as I said, was another Dr. Booth. They were making medical report behind my back in order to make me see a psychiatrist. But they didn't say psychiatrist. They said, well, we have to make you see, if somebody for a mood swing. I said, I don't have any mood swing. Then I realized they were making a document and a medical report behind my back. So when I realized, I send a letters to them, and that letter to them confirmed I pulled that stuff from there, to go ahead with it. So this is the police report I have. And another one. Is that okay there? And the third one, when I went and I tried to get a police report, they rejected it. I took it to the police station. They said they never seen that in their life. Rejected, and they stamped 7 times. So that's why they keep playing and tampering with my record. And this is this other psychiatrist, the one I saw. This psychiatrist, he said, this patient have no problem whatsoever. She saw me 3 times, and there's the second page. And this is the letters I sent to my last lawyer because he was removing all the evidence. I sent him 2 different post letters to tell him to stop it, to cancel the whole document. But nevertheless, this is the second one, registered letters to them. They still went ahead with the City of Ottawa Police, and they produced this document, removing the evidence. When I realize what's going on, it's shocking. Well, he given me some papers for myself, and then he giving the court some other document. Totally nothing to do with this stuff. So when I realize what's going on, I appear on February 22nd. They did not, because they have the evidence. It shows that order, under Section 48 to suspend, and lost in the court. They reactivated again. And I went and I held 2 more discovery. And then all of a sudden they decide to remove it all at once. So that's why I sent him those registered letters to tell him to stop. But he didn't stop. He went with the City of Ottawa, Jeremy Wright. So they colluded together. They removed the evidence, and they said they brought a motion against me to go to the court on February 22nd. They said, no, I don't have enough evidence. So when I showed them what I have, then they said, well, I'm sorry, now you have all the evidence. So they only showing 1 sessions, only the last sessions. They cut out all the edge of the papers in order to make it look like I only appeared once. But I went to Katana Reporting Services, and I got all the reports, which is clearly show a 3 session is being held. Now, the ladies who helped them out, within the court, they brought those stuff from the court and reactivated. I said, what's going on? You can't just take something out and then bring them back in. So I was trying to bring a motion to dismiss these actions against me. So this one is going to be heard on October 16. So please, I need a doctor help, medical help, law help. Anybody could help me out in order to put this case behind me. Neither my health is allowing me to continue on, or I'm not a lawyer in order to do that. But I've been put into these positions. I didn't know where to go from here. More or less, I've been slaughtered. There is no other way to say that. And now they're telling me I don't have evidence. They're removing all the evidence. And now, I don't want to, I don't want to leave this case here. I need the doctors, and I need this one. Even my doctor is the one who did the medical report behind my backs, and my lawyers. He sent me letters and he said, I'm sorry, I cannot represent you anymore. That's on advice of lawyers, so it's a conflict of interest, so I'm not going to be your lawyer. So I sent to College of Physicians and Surgeons. They turned me down as well. I sent to the, the health minister. She even turned me less than 2 weeks. She telling me you could find a doctor. Well, I've been for 9.5 years trying to find the doctors, but they keep playing with my record. And this is how bad it is. They not only tempered federally, they tampered with a lawyer tampered with my record, a doctor's tampered with my record, 2 doctors writing the same information. I said 2.5 years apart. How could you do that? So that's why I'm asking the politician federally and provincially to launch an investigation in this matter. But in the meantime, my health doesn't allow me to go any further. I need medical help. This is the country. I will never do anything to hurt it. But politics, it play big parts of it. They're trying to make it, why this guy doesn't want to come to Canada? It's nothing to do with Canada. This is the birth of my children. I never meant any harm to it. When I lived in Australia for 9.5 years, I promoted every time I opened my mouth. They know who I am, and they were proud to see somebody over there. So I'm asking the publics to help me out, and all the doctors as well. My health, I'm getting all the CSF leak from the top, and it poisons my brains because right at the back of the cranial cervical junction is not allowing that much. So all the lymphatic systems are being infected, and this is a part of it. So I'm getting all the stuff there. So this is one. If you want me to open it up, there is a bunch of files because they refused to give me my my blood test, so I started making my own. As you could see, so I'm getting two different parts. I could open it up. So the lymphatic system is being, burnt. That's what I'm having. And this one's here. At one time, I also have M1 protein, which is a multiple myeloma. So I'm getting it on both sides. Between multiple myeloma and lymphoma, which one's taken over, it goes like up and down like a yo-yo, and I didn't know where to go from here. I could still be able to be saved if they could stabilize that neck and get some of the stuff at my neck. It's right here. And the mesentery lymph nodes, the lateral cervical chains. Sorry, can I just sit down for a minute? The lateral cervical chains, it's inflamed. That's how bad my situation is. I did 4 operations on my inguinals area because when they twisted and hit me inside the car, they caught parts of it. So I had to do T12, thoracic T12 twice, a skeletal survey. So I got herniated disc, 4 to 7. I need to operate on it at least to make it movable. And then if this one doesn't get me, the lymphoma or multiple myeloma. What have I done? Done nothing, and I did not deserve it. That's why I'm asking the people in charge to put a public inquiry into the matter. If I'm guilty, let me be guilty. But I'm not guilty, and I could prove it with the papers in front of me. I just need to be saved. So right now, whether from the brains, CSF leaking into the body, it had to be collected by lymphoma, or whether it's going to be a multiple myeloma, which went at one time, which was at 12. So if you have a look at some other stuff here, I got so many of them. It's not showing this one's here. And another one's here as well. You could see the number that keeps changing. One that goes up and down, so I'm getting it on both ends. And I'm gonna end, please, please, help me out. somebody gotta give me help. I don't want to leave my wife. I don't want to leave my kids. I lost basically my family because in Australia, and now I'm losing my life because of this one's here. I don't want to leave. I want to go back to be able to hug my kids in Australia or to put some of the family back. So I cannot even allow to go back to there because of this contempt of court charges. It's done a lot of havoc for me. Because I tried to go public with it. That's why lawyers, and that's why they contempt with my courts, and the doctors forging my letters. Please help me out. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.